Okay, sorry about that. I had to grab something to eat. Okay. So you're still going to have to fill out these little tables so that I can memorize your names, pretend to memorize your names. So let's just. So this again is a test. It's a conceptual test. I'm here, Johnny. Okay. Good luck. Yeah. I just want to make a couple of announcements before we begin properly. The first is, can we move the painting off there because it's not properly protected? Maybe you could put that, it's supposed to be on the table where we're doing this. And someday we'll get a frame for it. The artist is here. Get a point and left. Okay, the first thing is, I don't know how many people are in London, live in London, or are commuting to London, but if you are in London, on Thursday at Goldsmiths, a person named Stephen Shaviro is speaking, and he is really worth your being there. He's speaking at 5 o'clock, it's free, from 5 to 7, and then if you're good and you know how to do this, and we will, is this running? It's from 5 to 7. But then they're going to go for drinks and dinner. No, it's not free. It's free to get in to hear him, but it's not free for the drinks and things like that. However, he's worth it. He's worth it.
Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday, yeah. What's that? Probably. What you have to do is, if you're going, let me know, because I'll send Simon O'Sullivan. I'm not sure who is running the speaker series at Goldsmiths Visual Arts Department is the ones organizing it. But if you let me know you're coming, I can let him know you're coming, and good luck. Hello. Oh, I'm so sorry.
There's still a chair available.
There's still a chair here. Nobody wants to sit next to me. But I have cuties. I know that.
Can you say the name again? We're fine.
Yes, his name is Stephen, Steven, Shaviro, Shaviro, Stephen Shaviro. His work is, his latest work, well no, not his latest work, his second to the latest work is called Without Criteria. And, no, I don't have it here. What he does is kind of the work that we'll be doing next term. It's all on sort of multi-dimensional thinking and art. And he's just wild. He's really worth hearing. But he's got a new workout, which I don't remember what it's called. Sorry, Stephen. What's it called?
The post-cinematic effect.
That's it. The post-cinematic effect. Are you going to this talk?
Now you've just told me I want to go, but I'll have to find out at work tomorrow if I can get the time off to go.
It's on Thursday.
But I will, because it's in Greenwich basically, so yeah.
Yeah, it's on Thursday then.
Well, stomping ground.
At 5 to 7.
I'll see if I can get Friday off.
Yeah, it's on Thursday.
Yeah, but I need Friday off when
Oh, I see. I don't know.
Well, if I'm going to London, I'll make a weekend of it.
Okay, well, of course, I don't know what I was thinking. Absolutely, that's definitely the case. Okay, that's the first thing I wanted to announce. The second thing I wanted to announce is the journal's thesis is now out. And I'm very interested in your thoughts about this journal. We had lots of discussions about it. Anyway, if you can open that, that'd be great. And it comes with this insert and the rest of the journal. The insert, you'll notice, has the images in it. The journal has the text, and there was a bit of discussion between the editor, myself, and the designer, who's very brilliant. The design team felt that it was important to make the images stand on their own. The editor felt that the images should be in the journal. Okay? We had a huge discussion that went on for like 6 months or 4 months, 4 serious months. See what happened? Okay. Okay, so I just want you to know that I'm curious what your thoughts are. whether or not you think as artists, you think you've been marginalized by being in a pamphlet or an insert, or if you think that that has elevated your work. The idea was that these are ephemeral works, therefore it's kind of an ephemeral environment. You can see where I'm coming from. But in any case, they are sold together. But I'm just curious what you think. I'm just curious. I really am taking real advice on this because it's a very big concern for me that people begin to realize that images are not text but are valid and are at the same level of research, and the designer who is an artist and very well steeped in visual arts believes strongly that that's what this does. So in order to win my argument, I had to agree with the artist, which was in fact excommunicating the artwork from the book, but that's not how it was seen. So it was just bizarre, but it kind of gets us into Kierkegaard, believe it or not. I'll show you why. So if you can just pass it around.
Okay.
There'll be a copy in the library, and then we'll have a launch. You guys can get it, but if you're really desperate and you want it, and you really, 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 really don't have any money, I give it to you. But if you have some money, I sell it to you. They're £10 each. But we're not selling at the moment. We're just showing. Show and sell. Show and sell. Okay. I think the lights are too bright. I think that you guys are not yet used to what needs to be done. Gosh. Okay. Is that too dark? No. Now, I had a few discussions last week. I thought I gave a really, really straightforward, in fact, exceedingly easy lecture, only to have people come up to me going, this was the hottest lecture ever. And so I'm worried that I thought I was saying something that was very straightforward, but maybe it wasn't as straightforward as all that. So in the future, that is to say now, if I say something that doesn't sound like you get it, and when I ask you, do you understand, the answer is not yes or no. The answer is, here's what I understand. Okay, and then you repeat back what you understand. Because if you just say, yes, I understand, I then believe you. But then it turns out you're not understanding it. So that's not any good, because we all have to move together. We're like big, huge amoeba moving together, getting this stuff. Okay? Anybody here, there are a couple people that are here that weren't here before, and there are a couple of people that aren't here that are ill. Natalie is one of them. Grace had to send her apologies, she had to leave. She had something to deal with. And Fionn may not be joining us because he's had issues with signing on. Anybody else know any other apologies before we begin? So let's do a quick whip around. Oh, the other thing is, for those of you that haven't been here before, that are now here, we are no, we're not live streaming. We are just recording for the web. But because some of you are new faces and you haven't been here before, is there anybody here that objects to being on the World Wide Web in all your glory? No, nobody objects. Seriously, is that a problem for anybody? No? Good. Excellent. Okay. So please, if you say anything you don't want the rest of the world to know, either make it up or say that you know somebody that did blah, blah, blah. You know, none will be the wiser. Okay.
If you wanted to watch that on the World Wide Web, what would you go to?
You go to www.CFAR-BIAD.co.uk. And then you come onto the website, and the website, which I will now show you, it looks like this, so you know. Okay, so what happens is that it goes to this is the website, so you can kind of get a sense of it. I don't know if you, can you see it okay? Is that seeable? And then you go down to where it says podcast here. And then you go down to Media Arts Philosophy Practice, that's last year's. Term 1, 2012, Term 2, 2012, that's PhD. Term 2, 2013, Term 1, 2013, so this gives you an idea. So this is this year's. And the last one was on. And Dane, for his wonderful sins, is being forced now he was volunteered to put this on the web, because Grace is exhausted. So he will be putting these on the web. Thank you. Okay, can we do a quick whip around, just to say your name, a line about yourself, or whatever name you want to go by for this year, or for this segment of your life.
Name's Andre. Work's going to possibly at this point in time looks like it's going to be dealing with analog digital crossover.
Everybody hear that? Analog digital crossover. He's in the MAP program.
Leslie, MA Fine Art, Sculpture, looking at studying form.
Okay.
I'm Dana, research and simulation of experience in virtual environments and digital landscapes.
And he's doing his interview for the PhD on Thursday. Ah, yes. And what do you think that's going to be on?
At the moment it's looking at duality and understandability notions of paradox in virtual environments, specifically taking on work of contemporary artists such as Virgil Cader and John Wilkinson, quantum physics, and of course
As you do.
As you do.
You know, right. Well done. Okay.
Christina, MA Art and Project Management.
Good.
Wendy, I'm a maker, doing stuff about identity and things like forms.
And that's in fine art?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, fine art, part of fine art,
That's right. We can go, leave.
Hi everyone, I'm Liam. I deal mostly with sculpture. I am very heavily influenced and use a lot of technology, science, fractals, quantum mechanics and fun science things within my work.
Ooh, things that move. Yes.
And I'm Annie, I'm doing History of Art and Design MA, but I'm interested in the curatorial practice as well, so the role of the museum and things like that.
Great. You know, the role is changing a lot.
I know.
Really wild.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. Okay.
I am Bruno. I'm making MA Fine Art, and I like to think in my work of a kind of deconstruction of architecture.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Behind Anita.
My name's Dan. I'm studying the MA in Fine Art part-time year 2. And my work practice, I suppose, look at the hybrid between what an artist and a curator is, and I make exhibitions.
Great. As your art.
And that's the process. That's kind of my medium is make exhibitions, and that's how I think through what I do. And the exhibition's always in flux, if you like. They're not finished. They're not meant to be sort of finalised.
They're ephemeral. Where's that brochure? Okay. Yeah. Good. Yep.
I'm Maria, and I'm doing the MA in Fine Arts, and I'm a painter.
What type of paint?
Portraits, landscapes.
I mean, acrylic, oil.
Oil.
Oil
acrylic,
mainly. And acrylic. Watercolor.
all of them.
Do you like watercolor?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, Anita.
Anita, and part-time art and design, and did drawing as well.
You've been what?
Did drawing work.
Drawing.
Yeah.
When you say drawing, do you mean illustration?
No.
No, of course not. It's a trick question. Okay, right, good. Okay.
Me?
Yeah.
Sarah, I'm doing MA full-time fine art, and I do sculpture and projection work.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Wendy, I'm doing fine art, I'm in the second year. My main practice is sculpture, and I'm interested in the boundaries between fantasy, reality, life and death, immortality narratives. that makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense. Yes, that's good.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
My name is Chi, and I'm studying fine art, and I can write stories and edit the videos.
Good. Okay.
George, project manager and festival curator, and I'm a musician.
And what type of music?
Currently, folk music, Celtic.
Celtic, so acoustic mainly.
Yes.
Yep.
In a manner of speaking.
I mean, not electronic.
Not electronic, no.
Yeah.
Traditional instruments.
Interesting. What's your favorite instrument?
Trumpet, actually.
That's very traditional
It's not my,
Celtic.
it's not my instrument. I play the accordion there.
You play the accordion?
That's my part, yeah.
Wow, that's good. That's a tough one. Where did you pick that up?
General keys player by trade, or piano pianist.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Trumpet as well.
That makes sense.
I'm Tanka. I'm doing MA Fine Arts. My main interests are painting, drawing, and figurative painting and drawing.
And you like all types of paint?
Yeah, I make oils, watercolors, acrylics, with pencils, with pen, with everything.
Which one's your favorite smell?
I prefer turpentine smell.
Right. Good. Okay, the drug users are in the back here. Very excellent, well done. Okay, we can move back to the table.
I'm Millie. I'm doing MA Fine Art full time, and my practice is mainly sculpture, but also concerned with like object to image and that relationship.
Object to image and image to object, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or just the one way.
At the moment, just the one way, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
I'm Yasmin. I do MA Fine Art full time. And I'm kind of concerned with translation of information between mediums. And drawing in space.
In drawing in space. You mean?
Concept led.
Okay. Not actually going to space.
No.
I wish, yeah. Actually, there is a draw that you can get into. I don't know if you've seen this, and I think it's in the Evening Standard or one of those horrible papers, the Evening Standard, Daily Mail, or somebody. And you can be selected to go into space. Yeah, it's fantastic. I want to do it. I think we should all do it as a group.
Research trip.
That's right, research trip. Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious. Okay.
My name is Natalia. I just finished my MA in fashion design, and I'm planning to do research in PhD research, which will deal with unseen body and contemporary fashion.
And you should explain that you do a little bit of work with Japanese paper, and in fact, Japanese things.
Yes, the methods which actually very influence my study is methods of flower arrangement, Japanese flower arrangement. It shouldn't really, the things with flower arrangement, well, anything in Japan, it's not just like what it sounds, like tea ceremony, it's not just drinking tea.
No.
Flower arrangement is not just put flowers into the vase. There are very rich and layered philosophical issues why and what happened in composition.
But in your fashions that you did with the odd sleeves and the bodies that arch over and stuff like that, that's not really flower arranging, is it?
It's arrangement of spaces.
Right. Okay.
Flower arrangement is arrangement of spaces and
arrangement of space over here.
tactile things and philosophical things. Philosophy in flower arrangement is a space.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Okay.
Oh, hi, I'm Sophie. I'm doing map. I'm a multimedia artist. I use film, textiles, light primarily. I'm interested in the movement of bodies. I always work from a feminist perspective, so I'm doing a whole series of images of changing bodies, particularly with young women. And I'm interested in using sensors, augmented reality, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, the basic stuff, yeah. Good.
Oh, and code. I like code. I'm just doing code for light so that they light up according to sensors. Oh, I got one to work today that I hadn't got to work. I was so excited. It's really sad.
Okay, this is really what the media arts program, you know.
But I was holding it, and it's a sort of temperature sensor. And then I started checking my emails, and it lit up, and I was like, oh, look, it's working. It's so brilliant. And it's the first time I've ever got it to work. So
That's
really
brilliant.
nice.
And what email were you reading? Buy the Royal Mail stock. Yeah.
Just boring emails.
Just boring emails. Wow, that's amazing. Just thinking you're reading something really fabulous. Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Claire. I am doing part-time MA Art and Design in the second year. My practice is mainly sculptural. I'm interested in the tactile and the body's relationship to materials and objects.
There's a guy that we have for the CFAR research fellow named Lee Hewitt, who's working on the tactility of, you know Lee.
I'm going to speak to him for my research and practice.
Well done. Yeah, he's very good. See, it's a small world. Okay, Lee Hewitt, in case you guys, I think you met him, right? Did you meet him yet? Did I bring him over here yet? It's all like one long day. Get in my world. So this is why I think I'm getting younger. I don't actually think I have days any longer. I just have one long day, and then I have wide days. It's a very different. Anyway, sorry. He's a very interesting character, and he will come here. He does work with trying to make sort of electronic and media arts environments touchy-feely. Although he's probably rolling around like this if he heard me say that. But he tries to make it very tactile. So when you walk into a mediated environment, it's got this tactility to it. That's what you're interested in doing?
Yeah, but not actually the media side of it interests me. If you ever do like Google search for more interactive art, everything that comes up now is to do with new media and the tactility of like computer screens and that sort of thing.
Right.
But I'm actually more interested in I suppose, the sculptural object being tactile.
Oh, great. So we have another person that you should then meet, named Andrew Lakin. He's the Wheatley Fellow this year, and he's totally into the touching of marble. He calls it something like marbophilia. It's the love of the sculpture.
Yeah.
He likes to hold them, and you can probably see Andrew in the streets. He's the one that's hugging the tree. Well, he's like hugging the marble, though. He's not in the trees. He's in the marble. Yeah, thanks.
I'm Sarah, second year Fine Art MA, drawing and paper objects, and looking at drawing as a site of emerging knowledge and invention.
Great, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm Wen. I'm studying.
Wait, say your name again?
Wen.
Wen, right.
Yeah, I'm studying in art and project management. I'm interested in the government's policy, cultural policy.
Great. So the cultural policy in terms of censorship.
Yeah.
I know that's probably, Wen did not say that. I put words in his mouth there. Yes, but that kind of thing.
Yes.
I don't know if I mentioned this, but I was at a friend of mine's wedding last week, and she comes from, the woman who was getting married, the guy she was marrying was one of my students from long ago, one of my PhD students. She was marrying this fellow. So anyway, I met her. She was from the One China policy time period, and her mother had 6 kids. And what they did, because they were living in a village, they didn't have to actually register. Well, they were supposed to register, but of course they didn't register any of the children. And she didn't have any of them in a hospital. She had them all in home. And she called them all Lee, which was fantastic. The boys and the girls, she called Lee. And so Lee number 3, I think it was marrying this student of mine. And Lee number 2, her sister, was there. So I was the best man, actually. I was very proud of myself. And Lee number 2 was the bridesmaid or the best woman or whatever. Anyway, but what was also interesting is that the father was asked to give the dates of the birth to register the children once they left to come to England or wherever they're going to get a passport. And he couldn't remember any of their birthdays either. So he gave them all the same birthday, which was September 10th. And but he did give them different years, but he couldn't remember which ones came first, which ones came second. So
typical guy.
Yeah, that's right. So the number 2 Lee is listed as younger than the number 3 Lee, and I thought that was so fantastic because I've always been so opposed to the way in which age is used to beat people up, to put them in little chains, just the same way they do it with gender. You know, and so by accident, the one-child policy has produced, at least in this one family, a completely radical approach to time, age, gender, everything. It's great. Anyway, thank you, Wen.
Hi, I'm Francesco. I'm a painter.
That was it?
Well,
and what are you doing on Thursday?
I have an interview. Yeah.
Wow.
Probably before him or after that. We'll see. We're gonna be together. Starting.
Yours is at 12.
Okay. That's good.
Dane's is at 2. Did he tell you this?
No, no.
Okay.
And I'm exhausted.
Right. Okay. What else?
Well, I studied philosophy before doing the masters in fine arts. So I'm interested in. Before painting, usually I'm inspired by like a philosophical, sentence or concept. That's what inspires me. And I kind of like when I understand like a philosophical concept, I have this need of like putting colors on the canvas or whatever it is. It's like reaction of it.
Hmm.
And then I struggle between like trying to be myself and creating an image for myself.
Interesting.
So it's all kind of fluxes of other
And I think that also the other major thing that you're concerned with is how to price your paintings.
as well, yeah.
That's right.
It is a big one.
It is a big issue, actually. It's a very big, how do you price your artwork? You know, I think that's actually a very serious problem.
It depends, how you feel about your works as well.
Well, not just how you feel, but what the market will bear. You know, because when do you know if your painting should be 200 pounds or should be 2,000 pounds or should be 20,000 pounds for the same thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Anybody have any answers to that question?
We should do an option module.
I know.
Yeah.
Hey, don't think we're not. It's very possible. I've just applied for a grant so we can think this through. So we might be able to do that. Okay, John, or Joe, sorry, what's your name?
John.
John.
I've been told. And I like to play materials and take images and show them in different ways.
And when you say take images, do you mean as in photographs?
Sometimes I paint the images, the photographic images.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I make the image by painting onto cinefilm and then transforming it and so on and so on. Yeah.
Great. And most of you saw his work today, so that was important. Yes, thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark. What am I interested in at the minute? Sound design, I'm going back down that path at the minute. I read George Louis Borges again because he's great. Pierre Menard, the author of The Quixote, and then that made me think I really need to get to starting to make sound designs that are basically a recreation of a sound, but making it perfect, as in you wouldn't be able to tell the difference, but it says something completely different because the process of making that is completely different to just maybe playing on the piano, doing it in the method that it was originally done in. But then looking at doing that with songs that I've already made before, so
would you have
recreating them through crazy methods of just me going, I wonder how this will work. And the other day I had a plastic bag out, wrap my microphone in it and put it in the water.
So you were wrapping your head in it.
It was just like, and this triangle, and I was trying to do that, thinking that it would create some kind of harpsichord sound. It didn't really work,
Really?
but my microphone was alright, so
Okay,
that's
good.
good because it was really expensive. And then afterwards I was like, why did I do that? But it's all in the process of doing it, really.
But you do know that the new iPhone, or one of the
wasn't that the thing with
falls underwater, right? Goes in
No,
water.
I've got the Xperia Z, and that's waterproof.
Yes,
And you can put it in the water. But apparently there was a hoax going around that started on 4chan, and they were saying that the new iPhone update would make your iPhone waterproof, and then people were all on the internet going, whoever said that, my iPhone's
Die.
Oh my god.
Okay, we're ready to begin?
I haven't done yet.
Oh, so sorry.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm so sorry. Yes.
I'm Tamsin. I'm on the Fine Art MA part-time first year. I've been doing stuff to do with textiles and collage and layering things and related to the body and movement. Previously I've done stuff with water and immersion and oblivion, and I want to kind of go back to the water scene.
Wait a minute, water and oblivion. So you link those two.
Sometimes.
Uh-huh. Some people link water and life. No, I'm not, I'm just thinking, so what about oblivion makes you link it to water?
It's kind of, there's something muffling.
Oh, I see, right?
And distorting and cushioning and sinking and...
So that would connect you with oblivion. And is that what you were doing with your...
I was going more down labyrinths.
Okay.
A labyrinth, watery, I don't know, I kind of got that, but maybe that was when I was a kid and played Alex a Kid and the labyrinth was watery. I don't know. Labyrinth's watery.
So with Townsend, how many people are dealing with water then the way Townsend is dealing with it?
I soak paper.
I soak water. Okay.
Well, I use chemicals. Actually, I should have said.
Well, use chemicals. Okay, you can sit in the corner over there with that girl who likes to sit.
Well, yeah, I get a bit out of it in my dark room, but I have a dark room, and it's like my favourite place, and I do blooms and stuff with chemicals and liquid emulsion. In fact, I'm doing masters of that. I don't know why I didn't say that at the moment. So, yeah.
Anybody else deal with the chemicals, not the ones you ingest, but the ones that you put on papers? You do?
No.
No. Anybody else?
I'm excited
No.
about the first part.
That's right. Okay, you're also in the background. Okay, anybody else do chemical immersions these days? Wow, that's interesting, isn't it? Who did? That's right. That's right, John. John, you did a little bit, yeah. That's it? 2.5 of you? I'm kind of used to or 1.5. Okay, ready? Ready to begin? The only other thing I was going to announce before we really begin on Kierkegaard is that today was the Nobel Prize was awarded in physics, and I don't know if anybody follows these things, but of course I do. And guess who got it, and guess for what? Or guess for what the Nobel Prize was given?
The God particle.
The God particle.
Yeah.
And who was it that got the award? No, Higgs. 50%, yeah, you know, that's good.
Higgs boson.
That's right. And what is the God particle? No.
Will it become anything?
No. It's what?
Structure in between.
No. Anybody else want to give it a go? You're not allowed to say yet. You can say in a minute.
Something before a black hole?
No.
Sparkly's great point.
Yes. No. Want to give it a go?
It's what accounts for everything, what makes things stick.
Yes. It's what makes things hold together.
Didn't they do a massive experiment that could have just ended in a kind of conclusion of the world?
Yeah.
But it didn't, luckily, because we all lived to tell the
But
tale.
it did. And this is all a dream. No, yes, they did try to, they did prove it. They did prove that the
kind of scary.
Yeah, very scary.
What does that prove?
They proved that there is a thing called the God particle. That what was happening. I mean, this will lend itself nicely into the move into the lecture. What was happening is that the either people thought something came before the world or after the world, or was omnipresent to hold the world together. That would be, let's say, the religious view. But Higgs and Higgs boson, actually, too, but Higgs argued that there's something that actually holds everything together, but it holds it together. It's not the name of the glue. It's the name. It's the God particle shows up sort of almost by, not by accident, but in a beyond a nanosecond. Like it happens, you know, and when something happens, that's when it creates this chain event that creates the gravity and everything else. So so they named it the God particle. It's worth checking out because it's really
Can you have a sort of understanding of it? Will they use physics? You won't sort of words.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you won't know what they're on about.
No, you will.
I will.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, you will, I promise. Well, I don't promise that, but it's possible you will. Okay, shall we begin now? I asked you today to read the Fear and Trembling. And how many people actually know of someone who read it? Okay. Okay, good, good. Let's begin with what's at stake, and then I'll load this down so we can do it properly. This opens up, the text opens up, it's called Fear and Trembling. So I ask you as artists, do you ever tremble before your work? Let's put it slightly differently. If you don't tremble before your work, it's not working. This is what Kierkegaard is going to start to explain. There's a difference between trembling because you're afraid and trembling because there's something magnificent that's happening. And it's not exciting in the sense that it's causing little hairs on your arm to stand up, not that form of tremble. But there's something that makes you aware that you're smaller than the thing you're in front of. It makes you aware of your presence, of your physical presence, of your physical body, of your physical breathing. This tremble is a very specific, odd entity. So I say it again. You don't have to answer this, it's rhetorical. But how many people, hopefully it's yourselves, get that tremble? Just get it when you're working. And that's what focuses you. Now, Kierkegaard is going to have various names for this. He's going to maybe sometimes call it silence. But it's not really silence. It's not like there's nothing that you can hear. He's going to call it silence in the sense that nothing else can be said. It's that form of silence. It's not sayable. It's not able to be said. It's silent in that way. Which is to say then that silence has a shape. Silence has a, not so much an embodiment, and it's not an absence. Silence has something which, let's just call it a tremble for the time being. It's kind of like what we were talking about before with doubt. Remember last week with Descartes, you can doubt your hand is in front of you. You can doubt that we're existing. You can doubt many things, but the one thing you can't go behind is doubting doubt. This is the basis of the Cartesian move. And there are a number of you that were like, well, why can't you doubt doubt? I doubt doubt. Ta-da! I'm through with the doubt. What he's saying here is that there's a platform. It doesn't have a shape. It doesn't have weight. It doesn't have volume. I mean mass in the sense. But we might want to call it the God particle, actually. Okay? It is this thing that causes a tremble. Now, it doesn't necessarily, maybe you're not really sitting there shaking to death, trembling at that level. But there's something that is happening, and that something that is happening, very long expression, we're going to call trembling. So, again, we circle back to the title of the book, Fear and Trembling. Think of something that really frightens you. I don't know if it's death that frightens you, or if it's life that frightens you, or if it's boredom that frightens you, or if it's not having money that frightens you, or if it's having sexual assault that frightens you. Think of something that really frightens you. And then what happens when you're that scared, or when you know of people that are that scared? What happens to them, usually?
Rigid.
Rigid, exactly right. Immobile. That form of fear, makes you stuck. So that is not the fear that he's talking about. But he puts it in the title to make you see that there are at least two types of fears going on here. One is the fear that makes you stuck, and one is the fear that makes you move. Now sometimes the fear that makes you get stuck also makes you move. Like someone's running after you, you're scared for your life, you run for your life. Run. Shh. Okay, that's a fear, and you are technically moving. Okay, away. So he's also not talking about that kind of movement. Are we okay? I mean, don't say yes. I don't know why I'm asking you a yes/no question. Just think to yourself that we're not talking about the typical form of being stuck or moving because of fear. That kind of fear that Wendy correctly noted, this catatonic, frozen, or this total fear where you just run, head down, shoulder to the wind, go, run, escape. Those two types occupy a certain kind of fear that he is not talking about. The fear that he is talking about is a fear that creates a form of, I'm going to say tremble, but I've said it, I've circularly explained this. It's a kind of thing that gives you a magic carpet ride. It gives you a platform, except there's no ground. It gives you something to go, yeah, that kind of works. The finger on the lip moment. Yeah, I can see that going. That's okay. So we're at this level, and he's going to connect that tremble with another shape, and this is the shape of silence. Silence. So in the beginning of his text, he says, he signs his text, Johann de Silencio. That's his pseudonym. Johann John, Silent John. The silence, there's something about silence that is a very specific kind of hearing. Very specific kind of acoustic. This is not the silence of, this is a different silence. This is a silence that is like this magic carpet ride we're talking about, this tremble. Or like we talked about last week, the doubt. The doubt isn't the form of the doubt of doubting Thomas, where Thomas sticks his fingers into the wound of Christ and goes, does it hurt? What about now? What about now? What about now? Oh, it does hurt. Okay, I believe that you're here. No, it's not that kind of doubt. It's not kind of prove that you're alive. I stick my finger in your wound, which really sounds quite wrong, and that's how he knows that Christ is real. It's not about that form of reality. It's not about that form of doubt. The doubt is that there's no farther back you can go, period. There's no outside of the outside. It's just the outside. And when I say it's just the outside, I don't mean it goes into an infinite scenario. I mean it's a limit. Bet you didn't get that part. Can anybody, Millie, can you respond back to does that make any sense at all?
Okay.
See, she said okay.
I'm preparing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm not agreeing.
Oh, wait, okay. No, wait, okay.
So, silence in the same way as doubt isn't a doubt is kind of, rather than being something that's like happening, so like rather than actually being a silence is like a point of like, whereas the doubt was like a position to.
It's good.
Yeah.
Doubt had a position.
Yeah.
The doubting Thomas version of doubt had a position,
Yeah.
right? And that position was pretend this is the body of Christ.
Okay.
See what? I feel very, very secure with my Coke or Diet Pepsi, and that's the wound. And as doubting Thomas, I'm outside the body, and I say, "Oh wow, it is Christ," and then I get ripped, my finger gets ripped off because it's metal. It's very stupid. Okay, like I go like that, that's not proving that this is real or unreal. I mean, maybe for Thomas it proved for him. But it has nothing to do with the kind of doubt that Descartes is talking about, because Descartes isn't talking about this perception person over here and this thing over here, and then they kind of meet. There is no distinction between this being over here and this being over here. So what would constitute the doubt in the story? I put this in a way that's completely incomprehensible. Even I can tell that it's emotion. Let me try it again. Okay. Pretend. Actually, you don't have to pretend. This is Jesus Christ. Pretend that this is. This is what? Pretend this is a real thing. Yeah, Coca-Cola lives. Okay, and I am doubting that this is the real thing. So I touch it, I hit it. Oh yeah, that is a metal thing. Oh yeah, that seems real. And then I go, well, what, maybe it's not real because it is metal, so it can't be natural. So, but we think, no, it's real because it's in 3D, it exists, I'm holding it, this kind of thing. And then if you could put your hand through it, you might think, okay, well maybe that doesn't exist then. Maybe that's how we tell. If we could go through it, put your hand through it, that would prove, it would not prove whether or not this is real or not real. That probably didn't work either. Okay, so it's getting there. Real isn't what? Real isn't an object in that way, but it has materiality. Write that down. Real has materiality. It's just not the kind of materiality that literally is 3D mass. Okay, so there's a kind of materiality. This materiality has different properties to it. So in this materiality, we can say, well, what's this thing made out of? Well, it's made out of metal. It's made out of metal, paint. Someone designed it, so it's got some sort of design. If we want to get really further back, it's got a production to it. People were exploited. There was a whole problem of making this. There's probably whoever made this is getting like 1p per hour, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, someone else is getting a lot of money. And by the way, when Osborne, made his statement about how the working people must work for a living, and that, you know, you have to, you can't get money unless you work for it. I thought to myself, that is a bit rich.
Coming from him.
Coming from him, who is, you know, okay.
So rich.
You know, like, I would like to know which bankers have worked so hard that they get a £50 million budget to, like, do whatever. I mean, that's just it's just a side moment I just like to mention. Anyway, what makes this up? What makes the materiality of this thing real? Okay, what Kierkegaard is going to try and bring to the table, what Descartes tried to bring to the table, is that what makes this real is that there are things that create its totality that can't be explained just by a metric alone, just by an arithmetic metric. And we're going to call these things weird words at the moment, like silence, or doubt, or tremble. So we're just going to go with that, just to start, just to begin, just to warm up your brains here, so you get a sense. The doubt. Now try and follow this again. For the Cartesian doubt, I doubt, therefore I think, therefore I am, is more or less the trajectory. The doubt, you can't go any further than doubt in order to make meaning happen. Another way of putting this is that for something to make sense, for something to be sensible, to have sense made out of it. Let's pretend this thing that I'm showing you now, this little piece of saran wrap or plastic, whatever, it goes out in all directions. Let's say it goes out in all directions. Here it is, this little thing. Now, it does have edges right now, But just pretend that these edges just go off forever. If we were going to try and make sense of this thing, if we were going to try and make sense of how this operates, this thing, we would have to put markers on it. We'd have to put boundaries on it, because otherwise it just goes off and off and off and off, like ah, like it just goes off and off and off and off. So you have to put a stop somehow. Now it's not a real stop. It's not that, you know, some policeman comes with a stop sign, stop here. What stops it is the concept that says you can't go any further, because something has to be a marker to end this. But it can't be a concept that is a position about something. You can't say, I think that this should stop because I just want to stop it here. It has to be a concept that allows you to have movement, not the kind of movement that's fleeing, running, moving, but the movement that goes, yeah, that's about right. That could work right about there. That kind of movement. And that is a limit. And that limit, Descartes is going to call doubt, and Kierkegaard is going to introduce as a tremble. So you kind of have a sense of where you're going with your artwork when you feel it. And you feel that kind of and go, yeah, that's it. Okay, now I'll turn left. Okay, okay, now I'll go forward. Yeah, it's this kind of thing that's beginning to create your contours.
But what about when you get that? Right, I get knocked down.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get my head around it. And I get the tremble and the silence. So you're making your artwork and you're in the moment, you're in it. You know, like so that's happened. And then you finish it and you go, Jesus Christ, is this actually any good, or does it mean anything?
Yeah, or Peggy Lee's song, Is That All There Is?
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
so obviously you go on to your next piece, but so what happens when after you've had that and then you've got your cancellations or something?
That's what we're going to discuss today. That is exactly the problem.
Okay.
Because how do you know that what you've done is good because it just is good? Or it's good because, well, you kind of like it. Okay, and we're going to get into this question of faith. Now, again, it's not the faith of literally praying, throwing yourself down to God. It's not that form of faith, though it could be, for those of you that are religious in the room. He's not quite saying that, but it is exactly this question of faith. And I'm going to put it slightly differently. Something brought all of you here, let's say in this room, not necessarily me, well, yeah, let's say in this room, because you had to be here. No one has a gun to your head. No one is saying you really have to be here or you'll be killed. You know, it's not that. It's you have got to be here. You've got to know. This, I've got to be here. I've got to know. This thing is what Kierkegaard is calling faith. I want to be very clear about this. We're going to spend the next 2 hours being clear about it, the next hour and a half being clear about this, so you really get a sense of what's at stake. Because what he's getting at here is that faith is a kind of logic. It's just not reason. It's a lot, or put it slightly differently, it's a kind of reason. It's just not rational.
It's like belief, isn't it? Belief in it.
Except it is belief, but it's slightly different because you don't say, I believe I'm an artist. You might say that to get yourself started. And you don't say to yourself, I have faith that I'm an artist. You don't say any of those things. You just say, I'm an artist. Or, yeah, I have to be here. Or for those of you, for every one of you who left home or left an environment because it couldn't have been worse. You know, like leaving only meant that however bad it is, it's got to be better than where you were. That kind of thing, that kind of quote belief, it's based on some sort of general sense that, you know, it can't get any worse. Of course, it could always get worse, and you should never tempt worse. That's just a byline. But the idea that propels you forward because God knows it can't get any worse, that move that made you go forward, this is the tremble. This is the thing that gets you going. And it's not just any old tremble, like you were saying. It's not just like sometimes you have a tremble and sometimes you have a tremble, but it turns out you have malaria. It's not that. It's sometimes it is not just how you have to go or that you have to go. So usually the trajectory goes like this. You're living in a horrible scenario. You realize one day, must leave. Okay, that's the first, let's say, realization. That's step one. Step one, you'd be 4 years old. You realize, okay, don't like what I see here. Must be better elsewhere. Okay, so you begin your trek. Okay, you bring your crayons, you bring your knapsack, you think, yeah, okay. Suddenly we're in The Wizard of Oz. Okay, okay, which, has everybody seen The Wizard of Oz? Okay, good. Okay, there are people that may never have heard of The Wizard of Oz. Have you ever heard of The Wizard of Oz? See, I knew it. Have you ever heard of The Wizard of Oz? No. Lanka, have you heard of The Wizard of Oz? Have you heard of The Wizard of Oz? No. Maria, have you heard of The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, brief moment on The Wizard of Oz. Have you ever heard of Judy Garland?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, no, there are people who have not heard. You've not heard of Judy Garland, for example. What about Elvis Presley? No. No, I know. There are some environments. I learned this a while back, but then there are probably pop stars that you have in your world that I've never heard of. So I mean, it's kind of even. Although Elvis Presley. Okay, so Judy Garland, Judy space Garland, Garland. God, I never thought I'd have Judy Garland and Kierkegaard in the same lecture, but hey, you know. Okay, Judy Garland, fantastic. Somewhere over the rainbow, she sings a song. You know, so Judy Garland's living on this crap farm in Kansas where everything's in black and white. I mean, in the film, everything's in black and white, but it's also her life is drab. You know, nobody dresses in glitter and has high heels and looks fabulous. They're all like horrible. You know, they're only worried about the chickens hatching, and you know, it's just annoying. And her parents, I don't know, they're dead or something's happened. So she's living with her aunt and uncle who do love her, Auntie M. And she has a dog, Toto, which is a little black, I don't know what it is, Cocker Spaniel Terrier.
Terrier. She carries it the most.
Yeah. Anyway, to cut a long story more or less short, she runs away from home. She runs into this guy who's in a circus. There's a tornado that happens. He pretends that he can read her future by telling her to shut her eyes, and he goes through her stuff and finds a little card, a picture of her aunt, sticks it back in the thing. Says, yes, I can see there's somebody who really loves you. You know, you must go back home. You must get there before you, you know, get into trouble or whatever. And then she goes back. She gets hit on the head by a flying window box because the tornado's hit. Meanwhile, her family has all gone down into a storage space, so they're not affected by the tornado. And then she gets hit on the head, and she starts to go into this dream state. And she gets in the house, starts going up and up and up and up, and lands somewhere over the rainbow. And that somewhere over the rainbow is basically the land of Oz, O-Z. And anyway, and lands on the Wicked Witch of the East. Yes. Who has, you know that story.
It's quite famous.
It's very famous, yes. Now, the reason I'm telling you the story is not to like get into the whole thing about faith and this way. The more important thing about this story is that when Dorothy lands, she miraculously gets the red ruby slippers onto her shoes, onto her feet. And Glinda, who's another witch who comes in a little bubble.
Oh, no, she has to click her feet.
Yes. Not yet. She comes in and she says, you know, in order for you to get back home, because you've only ever wanted to run away from home. You've only ever wanted to run away. Now you want to run back to home. Okay, here's how you got to do it. You got to get the Wicked Witch's broom and go to Oz and bring this broom. Oh no, that's wrong. I jumped a whole plot. Anyway, you got to get to Oz. The wizard there will tell you how to get home. Blah, blah, blah. And she says, well, how do I get there? How do I begin to get there? And the witch says to her, the good witch says, Glinda, says to her, well, you begin just where you are. That's where you begin. And it's the most important philosophical position. You begin where you are in order to get somewhere else. You don't begin thinking, I'm going to begin over there, because you're not over there. You're here. Okay, now, we'll let Dorothy and the wizard, I'll come bring her back later. But the point here is that there are many of you, if not all of you in this room, are in this room because you thought it could be better you thought you're in education because you want to be educated, you want to be bettered somehow, you have, quote, faith. It's not the kind of faith where you're praying about the fact, please God, let me be better. It's that you're being very practical. This is how I'm going to be better. I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try. So it's not the kind of religious faith. It's this other, it's a secular kind of faith he's talking about. It's a secular form of doubt. It's a secular form of trembling. And that's what I want you to try and get your head around. I want you to just keep hearing this. So, okay, so Johann Silencio starts his discussion off with a quote from a messenger. Does anybody have the book? Can I borrow that for a second? Because I was going to try and load this down. But okay. And in the beginning of very beginning, he quotes from quotes a Latin thingy where he. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Okay. This particular version is here. Really, this one wasn't here. It should be here.
Really long Latin.
The Latin thingy where he.
Really long section.
No, it's just a little beginning. How bizarre. Do you have it? Yeah, it should be in that one. Yeah. This is the. And let's see if it's in this one. It's too funny. Oh well. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to go online and read it out to you. He quotes from, oh, here it is. Something underneath the title. It says, and here's the question. It's a very famous line from Hammam, which says, what Tarquin the Proud said in his garden with the poppy blooms was understood by the sun, but not the messenger. Okay, so what Tarquin the Proud, who is, let's say, a nobleman, what Tarquin the Proud said in the garden with the poppy blooms, what Tarquin the Proud said about the poppy blooms was understood by the sun, but not by the messenger. So the messenger comes and delivers a message about poppies. And the quote here is, what Tarquin the Proud said in his garden about the poppies was understood by the sun, but not the messenger. So there's some message about poppies that Tarquin the Proud tells the messenger, go to my son and give him this message. The message is something about poppies. What Tarquin the Proud said in his garden to the messenger, and then the messenger ran off to the sun and told him this message, was understood by the sun, but not by the messenger. What do you think was being said there?
The messenger's the cipher. He just delivers the message, and it only has meaning for the son because he knows what
The context.
his father wants him to say.
He knows the secret.
Yeah.
Yes, he knows the code. That's another way of understanding secret. He knows the secret. He knows the code. And what do you think in this case it was? Do you know? Does anybody know what the code was? Tarquin the Proud said something about poppies to his son.
Cutting off the heads of the poppies.
He said, yes, he said, please cut off the heads of the poppies. And what do you think he was referring to? Killing.
Yeah.
Was really, you kind of have to wonder how has the messenger missed that point. Okay, like it's not really that clouded. Although if he did write it in this way, you know, you can understand how he could have missed it because it's so grammatically bizarre that it's very difficult. So.
I thought the sun was the sunshine.
No, S-O-N.
I was sitting there thinking, yeah.
But that, you need to read it, but if it's not in your book, then I can see why you didn't read it. But anyway, so it's the son, what's said by the child son. What do you think that this is going to mean now that we've been talking about trembling? That's not really about religion. Doubt, that's not really about Thomas. Space, that is about silence. What do you think's being thrown at? Why start off a book with this kind of cryptic comment?
It's about something more.
Right, so I will tell you something, and depending on whether or not you get what the message really should be versus what I tell you the message is. I can tell you the message, I can be the messenger, and I can tell you the message. But if you're not meant to receive it, basically, you're not going to hear it.
If you don't have the backstory, though, then you don't know as well.
Right, so that's another way of putting it. If you don't have the backstory, you're not going to hear it. And if you do have the backstory, you will hear it. Sometimes you could say, well, if you're not the chosen one, then you're not going to hear it. But another way of putting this is being attuned, being in a state of attunement.
It would be same as in poetry.
Yes, exactly the same as in poetry. So it's this attunement. So in order to hear the silence, in order to hear the secret, in order to know that you are being addressed, you need to learn how to become attuned. And for Kierkegaard, this is the first task of art. The first task of being an artist is to learn how to hear, how to be attuned. It's to understand how to observe with your ear. You're observing not with your eye, but with your ear. You need to see the silence. You need to see the tremble. Now when I say see the tremble, I don't mean you have to see goose skin on your skin. I don't mean that. It's you need to hear. You need to be attuned. You need to know that you are being addressed here. You are not the messenger. You are not meant to not know. You are meant to know, a different way of putting it. You are meant to be in the know. So to be in the know, you need to realize you're being addressed. To realize you're being addressed means you need to understand how to become attuned. To become attuned, there are actual ways of learning this, and I'm now going to explain them to you. So Kierkegaard begins his lecture by saying, there is the story of Abraham. And he tells the story, I think, 4 or 5 ways. It's basically the same story. The first version, Abraham gets up. God tells him, please go get your son, your only son, the son that you've waited. Apparently Sarah, the mother of the son, had Isaac when she was 90. She was like, fantastic. You know, I just love these people at their ages. They're just fantastic, you know. When she was 90. Brilliant. Anyway, be that as it may. I mean, these people lived for a very long time. I'm not sure how they counted their years, but I like it. It's fantastic. Anyway, so God says to Abraham, go get your son. If you really believe in me, you will take your son to Mount Moriah and you will kill him. And that will prove to me that you know that I am your God. And it'll prove to me that you will do anything to prove that you love me, that you know me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, question number 1. Do you think Abraham was hearing voices? Like if you heard a voice like that, if someone said to you, go take your child, your only child, or go take your mother, your only mother. For those of you that don't have kids, take your mother, take your pet, take something you really love, and kill it. And in so doing, that will be God telling you to do this. What do you think? Do you think that you would be...
I think I'd be insane.
You think you'd be insane? Be a little odd, right? So why isn't Abraham seen as being psychotic? Because it is odd.
Didn't everyone believe in God back then?
Well, I mean, a lot of people believe in God now, but that doesn't mean that you should be...
He expected God to speak to him. That was kind of quite common.
Just unfortunate these days, you know. It's like a very rare moment then.
But he'd already had the fulfilment that he would have a child that would be the seed of the whole of the nation.
You're right.
And so we had faith that, okay, we'd like it, we've just had that baby. If he tells me to kill it, there's obviously going to be a follow through of some reason how that's going to make what we thought.
He didn't reason it. He just accepted it because it was something beyond any reason that he could manage.
Right.
It was blind faith, wasn't it?
Yes.
He was convinced. It's going back to that thing we talked about.
Yes.
The conviction. He absolutely believed that he had to do it.
It was logical.
So
But
what's
it
the
was part
difference
of
between
that
that?
backstory? Sorry, but it was part of that backstory, like you said. Before this, it wasn't just suddenly a voice in his head saying kill the son.
Yeah.
It was the fact that we'd had the son that was either wanted throughout their whole life, or they'd prayed
They
forever.
said that
But
he'd
all
have-
this,
they'd
yeah.
have a child, and they didn't, but they still waited and waited and didn't believe it would not happen.
And then they had this kid.
So people else might not question mine because they said, well, they said they're going to have a baby when they were
But there was another feature that God also said, and that was do not tell anyone. Do not tell, first of all, definitely don't tell Sarah, your wife, that you're taking this child and going to kill him. Don't say anything. So, I ask you again, if you actually heard a voice in your head, or a voice coming from a chair or something, maybe it was in your head, saying, go take your pet, your most favorite pet, and kill it, in order to prove that you love God.
Was it because he himself was in a state of attunement?
Okay, we're getting somewhere here. So what is the difference between being attuned and being schizophrenically psychotic? And hearing voices in your head?
It's a very fine line, isn't it?
It's a bit of a fine line.
schizophrenic is disassociated.
No. Put aside the difference. What does Kierkegaard say? It says the very first. So Kierkegaard presents a story, and he says, look, the first way to look at this is that you got a crazy man. You got someone crazy. I mean, like he takes his son. He's going to murder him. This is like against the 10 Commandments, if nothing else. Also it's a little bit horrible to your child who's like 9. Not to mention the fact that you're going to destroy like about everybody's life in the middle of all this just because you heard a voice. So what does Kierkegaard say is what gets Abraham off the kind of psychotic, schizophrenic argument?
That's one of them Knights of Faith or something like that.
Yes.
As opposed to hero, what was he? Was it tragic heroes?
Yeah.
Right.
So they do something in lieu of, or almost a kind of a payback.
There's a reason for it, ethically.
Yeah, and a kind of
tragic hero.
But what's the difference then between killing Abraham's son and suicide bombing? Because you believe that you're actually changing the world for the better.
The idea of moral responsibility.
Okay. And what is that idea?
Well, Jesus meeting the guy, and the idea of Jesus is this rich youth giving money away, and how we would recognise that as a particular act, as opposed to Abraham and his moral responsibility of his son, as opposed to that which we don't.
Getting warm.
I don't think it matters with Abraham whether we believe whether it was right or wrong what he did. He's got to a state where he was observing by hearing somehow. Maybe he got to the point where it just made sense if that person or that voice, whether he was mad, I'm not sure. But
there are people who are very radically, let's say, involved. I know people who were involved in rape crisis centers, for example, in the 80s and 90s, who formed vigilante groups and would go around and harm the people who were rapists. Okay, now they were they believed 100% what they were doing, 120%. They were, there wasn't even a question about it. Now, what's the difference? Because, obviously it's illegal. Or the suicide bombing, or the bombing in, you don't have to go too far, Ireland, the States, and anywhere. I mean, I know that there, wherever there is a view of what is right, there are people that are willing to carry it out violently.
It's a fundamental belief. It's got to be a kind of heightened state.
Okay.
Like you get yourself into a trance.
So why did Kierkegaard, or why is this seen as like something we should even be concerned
Surely there isn't a difference morally, is there? If you're going to kill a child that's done nothing, and even though you're fully convicted, as we bombers are, there is no difference.
Well, for Kierkegaard, there is certainly a difference. Kierkegaard.
Oh, yeah.
There's a difference between morality and ethics.
It has to be a difference between morality and ethics, yes. What is that difference?
So morality is contextual.
No, but it was a good guess. It's a good try.
Is it could be that actually the action taken, not for the forget this one.
Abraham.
Yes.
There's not a whole lot of actors on the table right now, but that was a big guess.
He is a medium against his son, or I mean, it's for the son actually, rather than for him.
Oh man, you know, like that argument does remind me of parents that would slap the child going, "This hurts me more than it hurts you." Like, actually, no. Technically, it's actually hurting me more than it's hurting you. It's like, right. How
what I mean that he hears this idea about something, which something could mean actually a lot of things, not just actually killing, but he understands this as directly killing.
Who understands this?
Abraham.
Abraham, yes, he does. And yet, he doesn't go, you know, I think it's kind of a bad idea. He doesn't negotiate with God. He doesn't go, you know, let me get this straight. Are you suggesting I do X, Y, and Z? He just loads
Because
up.
he has to act against his faith. Because the faith had said you'll have this kid, and then he had it, and then the faith said, destroy that, what you were told to believe in before. And he still went ahead with that.
No, because the faith, it is about faith.
Is it suspension of the ethical?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is the teleological suspension of the ethical, but I didn't want you to mention that word yet because you're not sure why it's suspended. I'm going to see if I can just load down this thing. Yeah, go on.
Isn't it, sorry,
Yeah, go on.
the words out again. Is it not through the freezing, like the moral decision is not made by Abraham, it's made by God. He's a tool of God, so he doesn't make a moral decision whatsoever. He just accepts God's word, regardless of where it came from, and carries on with that fact. So he in essence, he's not making this decision. Yeah, he still had the voice.
So
there is no moral decision to
Good.
make.
So he's in a state of immaturity because he hasn't.
No.
But in essence, God has spoken to him, and God is above everything else to him. God to him is, you know, he's a very religious man. God is the most important thing. God says.
So we're just going to bracket the sense whether or not he's actually heard these voices.
Yeah.
We're just going to assume that God.
To him, God spoke.
Well, we're going to bracket that. Yeah.
He's just hearing voices.
You're just thinking he's hearing voices.
Well, God is like his rhythm, is the thing he tends to.
Yes. Can you bring that out a little bit more?
I would say that Abraham fabricated his beneficent God to follow.
Okay, that's a very modern position.
But the voice is still so compelling that it feels like he just accepts it. I'm not saying whether I'm sure that's morally wrong or right, but that's what he just accepts.
If you take that back to like a bomber doing that, that's exactly
Well,
the
that's
same.
what.
Yeah,
it's not
I
any
find
different
that
type of
totally-
faith,
doesn't
is it?
take
Sorry.
What I was trying to say is he doesn't take responsibility for his actions. It's like that Kantian idea of he's not in a state of enlightenment. He's blaming God for what.
He's not blaming God.
Well, he doesn't. He says I heard God told me to do it. He doesn't say I've decided to kill
But he's
myself.
not blaming.
Right, he's not blaming and is not blaming. It's like, okay, let's go back to being an artist, okay? And the argument that Derrida, for example, makes about painting is that it's an act of about any art really, it's an act of violence. In order to do your work, you must kill something. Now, he's not talking about killing your favorite pet or your child or your mother or something like that. You have to wreck something in order to make it happen. Does this resonate with anybody? Does this make sense to anybody?
My friend
Can
used
you-
to say, kill your babies.
Kill your babies, yeah. Is there any way that
Cut your darlings.
can you calm down on this side of the room. You got the drunk people in the back. You got the
So I go
murderers
to
on
the
the
back.
side.
Theatre Fred. It's just like that's what they said.
Yes, which is interesting. Now, Dan, you were the one that said you understood what it was to kill your love object.
I suppose when I first started art, I thought art was all about it was just about kind of therapy. So I did this piece about when my brother passed away, and I made the work, and it's very difficult. And then suddenly there was an exhibition that was going to happen. I had this moment thinking, what have I done? Have I breached some kind of trust or some ethics? And then my family all turned up thinking, oh, this is just the worst And people reading the work were kind of giving me this sympathy, which I wasn't really looking for.
Right.
I didn't even want to show the work, but the tutor was like, you must show this work. But my family supported me, but I think I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I was just compelled to do it. And the showing up, I just accepted it because the tutor said, you should show your work without even questioning it at the time. So I put myself in a vulnerable position, but also put others in a predicament. My mum's going, oh, what's this work about? I'm thinking, oh, God, you can't read the text in that. So it's just a bit difficult times, so I did, you know.
Okay,
so
what
I had
about
to wreck, basically.
several people's lives.
Yeah. But they were cool with
He
it,
laughs.
fine.
Wendy, why don't you give it a go?
Well, for me, truthfully, for me, I think I always tend to feel like that I wreck my position as a mother.
You rent it.
No, to wreck.
Oh, wreck it. Oh,
Yeah,
right.
my position as a mother.
And what does that mean?
I think I just question my morals in a sense that in order for me to make my work, that is my passion, I kind of feel like I have to neglect a part of me that should be there for the children.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
that, yeah.
And do you neglect a part of you that has to be there for the children?
No, the kids are fine. It's just me. That's
But
psychological.
but with you, you're feeling that you're neglecting a part. You have to. There's guilt involved somehow.
Yeah, it's trying to balance my life.
Okay, and that was like same with you, right, Dan?
Yeah.
There's like a guilt. Anybody else have a sense of violence to their work without the guilt?
I think in some sense you're, because you're putting yourself out there, as it were, in your work, the thing that you wreck is your own security, perhaps, about, you're risking it, aren't you, doing artwork and being sort of serious, if I use that word about it,
Of course.
play the way that, you know, you don't really know what other people are going to think of it, you think it's stupid some of the time, but you sort of got to do it. Or you decide, I'm not saying it's like a new thing, you've got to do it, but it's you make a decision to do that thing.
Or you just do it.
Mm.
That I'm talking about that part. This part where you just do it and let the pieces fall where they will. Something like that. There's no. I mean, it's true that your tutor made you do it, but I mean, you weren't like locked up and he didn't, or he or she didn't have a gun to your head
I
going.
kind of did it, and then I wasn't really seeing the kind of future of what it would manifest in terms of an exhibition. So
I had a colleague who was really into doing like family portraits with everybody naked, and sort of just as though you're sitting in a kind of like on a beach, you know, just sort of sitting there like. And he got really carried away, not carried away, but he was totally obsessed with this. So he ended up getting his family to pose in this sort of naked ways, and his work was huge, and they showed it at one of the galleries. And of course, the parents didn't realize that when he was doing this, they just thought he was like in art school, which meant, you know, whatever. They didn't realize that they were going to be naked, like 6 foot by 6 foot on a wall. And so when they came to see it, they were, horrified. They just couldn't believe. They felt that they had been, made fun of. The whole thing. This kind of thing. They had to do it. Now, I don't think that the work was really that good. Actually, from my view, I didn't think that it was probably worth that level of embarrassment. But that didn't matter. Now, this is at a much higher level. What's being discussed here in the Abraham moment. He's talking about killing somebody, a human. He's talking about killing a human.
Can it help, I think Wittgenstein says what can be shown cannot be said.
Yes. And what does he mean by that?
To the basic level,
yes,
there's nothing to be that you can talk about. It just shows something. It's not the representation of something, but it shows it.
Okay, so again, can you connect that with being attuned to something?
just be something instead of representing something.
Right, and what does it mean to just be something rather than represent? Why is that linked to this Abraham story?
You attune to the environment that you're in.
And what does it mean what does it mean then to be attuned in that way?
Is it like a faith to move forward?
Think in terms of sound, think in terms of becoming, that the observation is happening via your ear.
Can I try that rhythm thing again?
Yeah, go ahead.
So with the idea that God came to him and said, do this, there's already been this history with God giving him this child, so there's this kind of this rhythm of trust of so that becomes the kind of, I guess, the ground of which he kind of trusts to kind of do this, and without questioning that he just does this because there's this kind of rhythm of, you know,
It's nothing
give
more
your
than
son,
an instrument.
kill, he does it.
Okay, no, not yet. We're not there yet. We're getting warm, but then we go away.
It's like a leap in the dark.
It is a leap in the dark.
He has to make that. It's that moment where Kierkegaard talks about it, where you, like a dancer, where you reach a still point. There's a point where you tremble, where you just hit that point and you feel like you're flying.
Yes.
And it's just the most amazing feeling.
Yes.
And you're just suspended in air, and it
You're just
feels like it
suspended.
goes
Yes.
forever, but it's just nanosecond.
Yes.
And you can't. You try and repeat it over and over and over.
See, the fact of the matter is that Isaac, who didn't kill his son, luckily, for all concerned, mainly the son, still would have killed his son. And on some level, therefore he did. He was willing to go to the wall. Now, he didn't have to go to the wall, so the story ended better than it could have. But the fact that one is willing to go as far as how far would you go in order to fight for being an artist? For fight for being who you are? How far would you go?
Get into debt that you don't even know how you're going to pay it off.
Get into debt that you don't have to, yeah?
Be a paradox of yourself.
I mean, let's say suddenly the government changes and everybody who is saying the kind of things that we're saying or dressing the way we're dressing is considered completely immoral and horrible. What would you do? Carry on.
Go to a different country like those artists did when fascists got in. They
Okay.
knew that they had to get out.
So you either leave, you go underground, you go camouflage, but you carry on. And let's say you don't carry on. What happens if you don't carry on? I mean, let's say you're still alive. So let's say you don't carry on as being an artist. What happens to you?
You go no further.
You go no further, and what happens then?
You show the real faith.
You lose.
Yeah. And also you lose your spark. You lose your spark. You lose you.
Yeah.
You lose you. And so that becomes the question: who are you going to fight for? I always call this the airplane moment, which is, you know, the airplane's going down. You put the oxygen on yourself first, and then you put it on your kid.
That's the hardest thing. I was in a plane that was dropping.
Okay, that is tough.
And
Mine was just an example.
And it was a storm going from India to Bangladesh, and I had two kids, and I had one on either side, and I honestly thought that we were going to die because it was the scariest flight ever. And it was 40 minutes, and I just spent the whole time thinking, I can't. If the oxygen mask drops, I can't do myself first. I can't do that because they were tiny. And just kept going through my head. And we landed. We didn't even need the oxygen mask, and I was trembling after it. But I thought all the time. I kept thinking, you would save your child. You would always save your child.
Yeah, but the logic is, if you put the oxygen mask first, you won't pass out, so you can do the children.
I know what the logic
if you're doing
is.
them
Yeah.
first, you're going to pass out and not be able to help.
Yeah, but the same journey. We had such a horrendous holiday. It was 4 days.
It really does sound like holiday from hell.
It was 4 days in Kolkata, and when we arrived in the airport, we got in a taxi, and I put my son on that side, and he was 3, and my daughter here. And as we left the airport, another taxi came towards us, and I was shouting at the driver, "There's a car about to hit us! There's a car about to hit us!" And I was shouting at him, and he didn't stop, and it hit that side. So I leant forward and protected Owen on that side, and the car buckled and hit my knees, so I had blood everywhere. And my daughter was screaming, and at that point the driver got out and ran away. Really she's scared about accidents. And at the same time, somebody was taking all our luggage out of the boot. And I had like two
This is really just not going well.
So it was that holiday. So we'd had a really traumatic time. And then we had the flight to cap it all. And I never went back to Calcutta.
I want you to know that you shouldn't wipe off the whole city.
No, it's brilliant. I like Calcutta, but it was just it was a crazy time.
Okay, let's go back to this. Okay, let's turn to now we have to go to if you go to the preface on page 2, I want to get into really what we're talking about, because I feel that learning how to read is very important, and in fact doing the reading is very important. So he says here at the very last paragraph, he's talking about Descartes' notion of doubt. And he's trying to explain in the preface why this doubt is what he's using, and why he is not talking about immaturity. He's not talking about Abraham being immature. He's talking about exactly the reverse. Pretend all of you are Abraham. Everyone in this room is Abraham right now. Everyone in this room is willing to murder your son, as it were, S-O-N, in order to continue doing what needs to be done. You are all Abraham here. This is what he's saying. Understand what this really has meant. If you are the Abraham who feels really guilty about this, then you're not the Abraham he's talking about. He's not talking about that group. If you're the Abraham that knows that he's got a secret and is trying to make a decision, should I do it, should I not do it, then you're not the Abraham he's talking about there either. If you're the Abraham that says, maybe there's a better way, then you're not that Abraham either. The only time you are in the same shoes as Abraham is when you are being this artist who has to do what must be done in order to get to the next step, without knowing exactly what that is. Because later on, as we'll see, Abraham does not tell the secret. And again, the first question I ask is, did he actually hear voices in his head? Was he crazy? Was he psychotic? Well, assuming that he wasn't hearing voices in his head, because obviously if he's hearing voices in his head, he is crazy. He's psychotic at this level, and this is no good. But assuming that there's some other hearing that's going on, some other attunement that's going on, it's not about the context. You're not clear yet on attunement. There's some other thing that's going on called attunement. The next question is, why didn't Abraham tell the secret? Why didn't he tell it? Does anybody know what the answer is before I get into this next part of the seminar? Does anybody know why Abraham didn't tell the secret?
Because no one would believe him.
No, I think if you went up to somebody and said, look, I got this little secret, I'm going to kill.
Secret, right?
Yeah, I'm going to. No. Why didn't he tell the secret?
Because it dilutes it.
No.
Was it because God said not to tell? And
No.
it was part
Because
of his...
Part of the deal?
Because the secret,
No.
if he shared the secret would still be with him.
No.
Would change the situation.
That's logically why you didn't tell, but why was it not able to be told?
You can't put it into words?
Yes. Because it's not tellable. Because it can't be told. It can't be told not because someone's saying, don't do it. It's not like, it's not like sort of the big hand of God saying, don't tell, don't tell. It's rather that it isn't able to be told. These are all very tough. I get the fact that this first couple of lectures are going to be this kind of like, wait till we get to Hegel, you're going to love it. Hegel's going to seem so clear. Because this is all this kind of really like, wow, it's like very touchy-feely. But just try and stick with this, because it's tough. Try and, when you go back and read Kierkegaard, try and read it now with the first question in mind was, what was the voice that Abraham was hearing? And the answer to that question, it's the voice of attunement. You need to understand really what that word attunement means. what does it mean to hear with your ear? Oh, sorry, what does it mean to see with your ear?
Why is it not tellable?
Next point, why is the secret not tellable? Why is there the situation that it cannot be told? Not because someone doesn't want, so the fact that someone wants or doesn't want to tell the secret has nothing to do with the ability or not to tell the secret. Why is it not able to know?
Is it because like everyone else is like the messenger in the situation between?
Brilliant! Yay! Can you explain that a little bit longer?
So like, say God's the like nobleman in the garden, and then so he
And the
sent a
son
message
is, who's the son?
specifically that only the what was his name? Yeah,
Son.
the guy.
Tarkid the proud
Yeah.
is God, let's say.
Okay, yeah. And
Okay.
then Abraham is
The son.
the son. And so we're all the messenger. So if he's trying to explain it to the messenger,
It wouldn't be hearable. It's code.
So you can't actually verbalize it in the way that they understood it.
Can you say it one more time? You're completely right. You're you know, ding, 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 ding. You know, it's like, you know, if we were in America, you'd have things coming down from the ceiling. You know, it's like, say it again, just so people get it.
So I keep forgetting all the names of people though.
Don't worry about the names.
So right, so God is the nobleman and the father in the garden, and then Abraham is the son who the messengers takes the message to. Where are all the messengers? So we couldn't physically understand the message because we don't understand how to.
You can physically understand the message, but you
can,
don't understand
we
what's
can't
being
understand
said.
what is actually being said because I don't understand the code and don't understand how to
Good.
actually.
That's if we are all the messengers. Now, if we are either the son or the God creatures,
Yeah.
on either side of that, then we understand the message,
Yeah.
but can't share it. Do you see how that works? Okay, so this is why learning how to read philosophy text.
Is it not that he doesn't understand though because he's just going on faith?
This is point number 3. He does neither not understand. Now let me put this out differently because there's too many double negatives.
Understand is not a word to use in this situation.
Exactly. Why is that?
Because
Okay, right.
Well, I guess it's part of all these kind of words that we use, like representation, and that make sense. I don't know.
Somebody, I think Wendy was saying that you're a maker of sense, right?
Yeah.
Make sense. Okay, so to make something have sense doesn't mean you necessarily understand all the principles of how it's made, right? Like, for example, if I want to turn on the television, I don't necessarily have to know how the television works at every level. Or if I'm, like John today was showing his work on different monitors, I might need to know whether I want to put on a plinth this high, or this monitor, or another monitor, have a general sense of how the monitors operate, but I don't need to know the technical, down to the nth degree of how something works in order for it to be used in my making of sense, right? I don't have to know the whole thing. So now, go on and finish what you're saying.
So there's nothing to be understood, right?
So if I said to you, go use the television, you don't need to understand the television. You need to understand the command, turn on the television. But you don't need to understand, well, if I turn on the television, what this really means is that there has to be an electrical source, which really there has to be some kind of, there's not like a little person inside the TV somewhere, showing flashcards or doing this thing. Nothing like that's going on, right? It's just the TV is turned on.
Something you just do it. You don't really think about doing it. It's like there's
But it's not, but here's where it's very important. It still is about reason. It's just not about. It's not about rational reason. It's about a certain kind of logic that you're allowing to kick in, but it's not that you have to. It's not an explainable logic. It's one that sets of patterns, that you were saying. Like so let's say you know that there are these patterns, so you can predict what comes next, but you don't need to know technically what that whole prediction story is about. You don't need to understand quants or statistics or probability to go understand how prediction operates. No, you don't know what to read.
You have to understand how to breathe.
You don't have to understand how to breathe in order to breathe.
You can use a computer without reading code.
That you can use a computer without reading code. You can understand how to use your iPod without thinking there are 5,000 albums inside of it. You know, that kind of thing. So let me just read you what he says here about Descartes. He says here this is on the very first page. I'll just start off here. Not merely in the realm of commerce, but in the world of ideas as well, our age is organizing a regular clearance sale. I think this really could have been written like yesterday. Not merely in the realm of commerce, but in the world of ideas as well, our age is organizing a regular clearance sale. Everything is to be had at such a bargain that it is questionable whether in the end there is anyone who will want to bid for it. Every speculative price fixer who conscientiously directs attention to the significant march of modern philosophy, every privé docent, every tutor and student, every crofter and cotter in philosophy is not content with doubting everything, but goes further. This is a critique of Descartes. This is a critique of those that don't understand how Descartes is using doubt. Every speculative price fixer who conscientiously directs attention to the significant march of philosophy is not content with doubting everything, but goes further. Perhaps it would be untimely and ill-timed to ask them where they are going, but surely it is courteous and unobtrusive to regard it as certain that they have doubted everything, since otherwise it would be a queer thing for them to be going further. This preliminary movement they have therefore all of them made, and presumably with such ease that they do not even find it necessary to let drop a word about the how. For not even he who anxiously and with deep concern sought a little enlightenment was able to find anything, any guiding sign, any dietetic prescription as to how one was to comport oneself in supporting this prodigious task. Quote, but Descartes did it, unquote. Descartes, a venerable, humble, and honest thinker whose writings surely no one can read without the deepest emotion, did what he said and said what he did. Alas and alack, this is a great rarity in our times. Descartes, as repeatedly affirmed, did not doubt in matters of faith, and he gets into this whole question of God. And so he's trying to say that he's not talking about the doubting Thomas part of doubt, as we've gone on a couple of times. He did not cry fire, nor did he make it a duty for everyone to doubt whether or not there was a fire, not a fire, doubt. He did not cry fire, nor did he make it a duty for everyone to doubt, for Descartes was a quiet and solitary thinker, not a bellowing night watchman. He modestly admitted that his method had importance for him alone and was justified in part by the bungled knowledge of his earlier years. Okay, but then he goes on to say, and this is where I'm trying to get you to think about what this faith thing gets into. He said, let me see if I can find it. He has a little quote where he says, let no one think that I am here to propound a method, this is from Descartes, which everyone ought to follow in order to govern his reason aright, for I have merely the intention of expounding the method I myself have followed. But no sooner had I, Descartes, finished the course of study at the conclusion of which one is ordinarily adopted into the ranks of the learned, that I began to think of something very different from that. For I became aware that I was involved in so many doubts, so many errors, that all efforts to learn were, as I saw it, of no other help to me than I might more and more discover my ignorance. What those ancient Greeks, who had also some understanding of philosophy, regarded as the task for their whole lifetime, seeing that dexterity in doubting is not acquired in a few days or a few weeks, what the veteran combatant attained when he had persevered the equilibrium of doubt through all the pitfalls he encountered, who intrepidly denied the certainty of sense perception and the certainty of processes of thought, incorruptibly defied the apprehensions of self-love and the insinuations of sympathy. That is where everybody begins in our time. So he's saying here, it takes a long time to understand how to doubt, the method of doubting. It's not to say, you say this, I doubt what you're saying. meaning I disagree with what you're saying, meaning I'm going to take a contrary position. Doubt is this much more ephemeral, much more, well, it's a limit, but the limit is not a hard limit that is like this can. It's not something that's opposed to each other. The doubt becomes the context. The doubt becomes the atmosphere. So anyway, he goes on to say, because I'm still not quite where I want you to present. I guess it's not. Go to the next page. I'm going to go to page 4. Okay, so then he says, and this is where he gets into the question of what he's trying to talk about. So he says, look, if you don't allow yourself to take time to understand how to doubt, not that you must doubt, but that you must learn how to doubt. It's not this doubting Thomas business. You must take time to learn how to doubt, because if you don't take time to learn how to doubt, you'll end up falling into the trap of systems, a very specific kind of systems. A systems where somebody else has given the rules, some other culture has given the guidance, and this is not going to help you actually understand the murder that you will commit. This is what he's trying to say. I, Johannes Silencio, who is a religious, moral, ethical person, knows that a certain violence must happen if you were to understand the world of art. You must understand how this violence operates. It is not rational, and it's not rational. Rationality has nothing to do with it. It is a type of reason that allows you to think without systematizing. And so this is what he says. He says here, on page 4, he says here, even though one were capable of converting the whole content, oh, sorry, darn, I missed the part. Okay. On page 3, bottom page, the present writer is nothing of a philosopher. Okay, modest. He has not understood the system, does not know whether it actually exists, whether it is completed. Already he